2026 marks 10 years of Dem Bois Inc. That's 10 years of community care, 10 years of leadership rooted in love, and 10 years of turning visibility into possibility. And so to honor this milestone, we've launched our 10 for 10 campaign. You're like, Sean, 10 for 10, what's that? So we are inviting you, our listeners, our supporters, our allies, and other folks in the community to give $10 a month to help sustain the care, leadership, and visibility that trans men of color deserve. And so 10 years is a very long time, right? That's a decade. Can you imagine raising a child from birth and then looking at them at their 10th birthday party and being like, wow, you've watched so much of their growth within that 10 years, right? That's the same for us. And so Dem Bois Inc., over the 10 years, we have done a lot. And so we have provided gender affirming surgery grants to trans men of color to obtain gender affirming surgeries. We started this podcast. We are now in season 4 of the podcast in 2026. We created our Visibility Equals Possibility merch. We partnered with Emilio and Zion, both trans men of color, to design what visibility equals possibility means to them. And it's reflected in our merch. We also partnered with the Black trans man, Mola Flow, to create our theme song. And that's the music that you hear every time you tune into Dem Bois Podcast. We've done merch. We've done partnering. We have delivered care packages to trans men of color in need of personal hygiene items within our community. We have done a lot in 10 years. And so imagine what the next 10 years would look like. Donating $10 a month says, I believe in this work. I believe in the future of trans men of color, and I believe in what comes next. And so if this call resonates with you, join us today. And we've even made it easy. You don't even got to go anywhere. Whatever platform you're listening to this episode, go ahead and open up the show notes. And from there, you will be able to click the link to start your contribution to our 10 for 10 campaign. Your monthly support helps ensure Dem Bois can continue showing up for our community with intention, care, and impact. So thank you for listening and thank you for believing in our mission. Okay, and I'm going to get out of here so you can listen to this episode. Take care.
Dem Bois. Yeah, we done. Dembois.org. Dem Bois. Dem Bois. Yeah. Dembois.org. Dem Bois. Yeah. Dem Bois.
My next guest I had the privilege to sit down with is a health researcher, poet, and marathoner. So as a researcher, they aim to make healthcare more integrated, responsive, and accessible. As a poet, they aim to tell stories that capture the beauty in the everyday. And as a marathoner, they promote visibility for trans athletes and lead initiatives that improve inclusivity in sports. We spent a lot of time within this episode discussing how to stay connected to your humanity. And so this episode is going to leave you warm and fuzzy. I hope that you enjoy.
Dem Bois, Dem Bois, amplifying trans men of color voices. Yeah, we here making noise, yeah, making noise, yeah. Visibility equals possibility. You know we Dem Bois, yeah, Dem Bois, yeah. Amplifying trans men of color voices. Yeah, we here making noise, yeah, making noise, yeah. Dem Bois, yeah.
Welcome to Dem Bois Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Aaron, he, him, his. My next guest is a health researcher, poet, and marathoner. Their work lies at the intersections of storytelling, community building, and having as much fun as possible. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean.
Yes, I'm so glad to have you here. This is actually our second time meeting each other. For folks who don't know, I'm also a co-host of Power Beyond Pride podcast. And so we interviewed you on that podcast. And so I was like, this person is absolutely amazing. And I wanted the audience that listens to Dem Bois Podcast to get a taste of who you are. So you want to go ahead and, and for folks who don't know, the Power Beyond Pride podcast is an LGBT change-making podcast. And so I'll make sure to link that podcast also in the show notes for folks that want to listen to that as well. But you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for folks to know who you are?
First and foremost, thank you for the very kind and warm introduction. My name is Simran Chugani. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a researcher, marathoner, and poet. Like Sean said, I live in Orlando, Florida. This is my home. And I'm excited to be talking with you today about all things gender and humanity and how we can connect with each other.
Yes, amazing. So amazing. You're such an amazing person. And I just told you before we started recording how much I admire you and who you are. And I've been kind of following like you know, your journey and things that you're doing. But the name Simran, how did it choose you?
So that was a journey in itself. Simran is the name that I was given at birth. And the reason my parents gave me the name Simran is because there was this Bollywood movie that came out in the late 90s, and they really liked the name. So it stuck with them, and it eventually got transferred to me. Simran in Hindi means peace, and it means meditation. Now, it took me a while to get to that point. As a kid, I was very much the first one to pick a fight. I was in karate, I was a taekwondo black belt. I was always ready to fight. And so I felt a little distanced with my name because my parents would always remind me, like, lead with peace, or like meditate on what you want to say before you say it, think about what you say before you say it. And I agree with all of those sentiments, but my underdeveloped frontal lobe absolutely did not. And the more that I thought about it, though, the more that I thought, like, who gets to define what peace is to me? And in college, I started to participate in spoken word poetry. I started to lean into the poetry community a little bit more. And poetry became my outlet to express myself against a lot of the social injustices that I saw. I was a college student when George Floyd was murdered. And poetry became my artistic outlet, not only to connect with the community, but to understand where I fit into the larger conversation. And initially, my poetry was very angry. It was very combative. It was very much like, hey, you're going to attack us. I'm going to use my words to get really, really angry. And in reflecting on all of those experiences, I think what really set me free, and when I say set me free, it's more of me saying, like, you can attack us, but I'm not going to choose to be influenced by your words. And I'll preface that by saying that there's a lot of privilege in being able to say that, but also thinking, like, when we are privileged to be physically safe, how can we get to a point where we can say, like, okay, you can attack us with your rhetoric, but what we're going to do is we're going to showcase the good we see in the world. We're going to spread the good we see in the world. And sometimes that looks like coming together and protesting as a community. Sometimes that looks like getting violent in the face of violence to protect our home and to protect our personhoods. So those two things, my personal peace and violence, are not mutually exclusive. And that was the point that I really got to in my poetry. And that's really what that spoken word community really gave to me. And bringing this all back together to, my name means peace in Hindi. But the way that I see it, my peace is protecting myself and my people by any means.
I love that. That's beautiful. But you know what? I want to go back to you saying, that you were in karate and all that, but yes, but your parents, they're talking about peace, but they're the ones who took you to the karate classes. They're the one who signed up. They're the one who paid for them. So it's kind of like they're asking you where all this came from. They are active participants in having you go to karate every week. So,
they were probably like, this kid has way too much energy. Let's just get rid of him.
Get
rid of him for an hour.
Right, exactly. So you don't drive them crazy. You go drive your instructor crazy and punch and kick on other people.
Exactly.
That's understandable. But to know that even the discipline of karate is still peaceful. Because even, you know what I mean? So it's still interconnected in a way, even though people think of fighting or think of it as being violent, but it's actually learning how to hold yourself, how to have self-control. And so within that, there is still peace.
Exactly, exactly. And there's such an art, and this is such a tangent, but uh, like the culture around karate is so interesting because it is like derived from this very deep respect for the people you call opponents and the
Hmm.
spaces you get to practice and fight in. And it's this very deep respect and just love almost that you get to express through moving your body in such a way.
Beautiful. And I'm gonna have to look up the history of karate because I actually don't know that. I've never been a karate person myself. I was always too shy, so that was never gonna be my thing, right? I was always the person of like, I'm in my house and I'm practicing my instrument. I was an instrument kind of guy. So
Oh, cool. What instruments did you play?
I played clarinet in when I was younger. That was my thing. That
Okay,
was my jam.
deep cut for the listeners.
Ye-
Clarinet is pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I actually still have my clarinet from when I play. I started playing in the third
Hey,
grade. I actually still have it. So yes, yes.
my best friend growing up played the clarinet. I played the trumpet, and we would do whatever we could so that we could just practice together. We ended up doing a jazz duet of a clarinet and a trumpet.
Wow.
And you can imagine how that turned out.
Wow. Well, I mean, it gave you another outlet.
There you go. There you
Right.
go.
And so I love to ask, like, my guests, like, what does your gender journey look like? Right. We know where we are now. We have this understanding of where we are now to some
Mhm.
degree, right? We have the language to explain where we are now. But like, when did that start for you? Do you remember of like a time or an age where you were like, wait a minute, something is different about me, and it's not based on how I was socialized, how my family wants me to be, but that you had an internal idea of who you were, who you were yourself.
Oh yeah. I think right from the gate, as a super young kid, I had a very strong idea of who I was, and at that age was allowed to express exactly who I am. If I wanted to wear certain clothes or not wear certain clothes, it wasn't a huge deal because I think a lot of the times it's, you're just being a kid and no one really thinks twice about like how you're supposed to perform your gender. I'll also just provide a little bit of context. So I come from a family of immigrants. My parents grew up in India, immigrated to the United States in the 1990s, practiced Hinduism, and grew up in India practicing Hinduism. And they practiced Hinduism at a time post British colonization. And that time period of practicing Hinduism was historically and comparatively pretty conservative when it came to anything related to LGBTQ plus people and cultural events. And so they had these preconceived notions about LGBTQ plus people, and that was kind of the environment that I was raised in. So as a kid, it was very much, hey, I like my parents didn't think twice. It was, very normal. And I didn't think about it either because we're just being a kid. I was just doing what feels good. And then when I got a little bit older, middle school, high school, there started to be a lot of these unsaid expectations about how I was supposed to perform my gender, be it what I was supposed to wear, how I was supposed to move, how loud my voice could be.
Mhm.
Um, all of these very visible and invisible elements of the way that a lot of folks perform their gender were kind of imposed as expectations on me, and in very subtle ways I tried to combat that. So for example, like if I was pressured to wear heels, I would wear flats, or if I was pressured to wear a pink dress, I would always choose the blue dress. Like in very subtle ways, I did things that just tried to kind of rebel against these expectations without really knowing what was going on. Um, the school system in which I went to is now pretty progressive, but at the time that I was in school, there was not a lot of rhetoric. I don't remember a single class talking about any vocabulary related to being trans or being queer, and so all of that was just so foreign to me until I got to college. And when I started to learn that vocabulary, when I started to have the language to empower myself, that's when I really started to experiment with what felt good, try to be that kid again who was like, hey, I have no expectations, I'm just doing what's good, I'm just doing
Mm.
what feels good. And I tried to do that, and I was met with a lot of pushback. And I think my gender journey during that time was, it felt like I was just climbing up a hill or pushing a boulder up a hill
Mm.
of, I feel like I'm doing a lot of work that does not feel easy to be who I am, and being who I am should feel easy. So
Mm.
it was this internal tension of, why does this feel so hard? So from there, I started to really get into spoken word poetry. Like I said before, I started to explore poets like Andrea Gibson, and I really resonated with Andrea's work because the way that they talk about their gender and the way that they talk about just the humanity and the personhood within each of us, it went beyond any of these expectations or gender norms that I had been socialized with. And that's what I really connected to. And so in those times when I felt like, hey, why does it feel so hard to be myself? Their words and their poems and their art were really like, hey, I need to let go and just do what makes me feel most human. And that is when, like, when I connected to my humanity, I found myself connecting to a lot of people. I found myself being open to connection with a lot of people. So instead of fighting against people who didn't agree with what I was saying or who I was becoming, I started to find connection with them. And that made it a lot easier. And that made it feel like I wasn't pushing a boulder up a mountain anymore. And so for me, that's what like eventually gave me this piece of like, this is who I am. And what I'm working toward in this lifetime is really just creating and fostering those connections with other people.
Mm. And so there was an age where your parents just allowed you to be. And in their minds, their parents like, oh, this is just a kid. You're allowing the kid to just be a kid, right?
Yeah.
What age do you think it shifted from, okay, now we're gonna kind of get you together because now you're not just a kid anymore. Now you need to fulfill these certain roles. Do you remember kind of like around what age that was?
Yeah. So that was around middle school.
Mm.
And one of the big things that I think a lot of children of immigrants really resonate with, and this is perhaps a generalization, but based on my conversations with a lot of other immigrant families, what I've gleaned is that a lot of children of immigrants kind of have this sentiment of, my parents were so obsessed with the way that our family was perceived.
Mm.
And so especially when the social and cultural environment was so fickle, and it was like, I need to do exactly XYZ in exactly that order. I need to have a linear life path in order to find success in this country, in order for people to not think that I'm weird or that my family is weird or that our food smells weird, what have
Mm.
you. It was this very like, you have to be exactly this person. You need to fit into this mold so that you can be accepted into society. It was respectability and acceptability politics from start to finish. And I think where that became really pervasive was in middle school, when my family would look at other families and then they'd be like, hey, like, this person's daughter is starting to shave her legs, or this person's daughter shops at this store, or this person's daughter wears these types of clothes. Why can't you do that? Or why can't you do this? And it was very much like a comparison of one person to the next, with the end goal of, let's assimilate as much as possible. So it was this very layered dynamic that I think became especially potent during kind of that puberty, pre-pubescent stage.
Mm, that's exactly what I was going to say. They just wanted to
Mm,
assimilate. And you know what's so wild to me about that? And nothing wrong with that, because for one, you want to seem like everybody else, so you're not the one that sticks out so you don't get picked on.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
what's wild to me is that if we think about the fundamentals of what this country means, what the US means, not what's actually happening, not what actually has occurred, but based on the idea of what this country is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a free place where everybody come together, right? It's like this melting pot of a place where everybody can come. Everybody is welcome here. Everyone can build a life here, build a future, raise your children. But if you're coming here from India, and obviously you have a different lived experience. They had a different lived experience in the country that they originated from. And you're supposed to be able to come here and bring 100% of that. That's what make this country great. If everybody had their little bits and pieces of who they already are, and I'm not asking you to change to go look like Joe up the street. I'm not asking you to change to look like the white woman and white family up the street with the picket fence and 2.5 children. I want you to be exactly who you are, exactly how you came here from India. And that, I feel, is how we were supposed to exist here, right? And so we're supposed to borrow from each other, take from each other, share with each other, start new things. But never are we supposed to assimilate and look like each, like those movies where they have the nice trim lawns and everybody pulls out their driveway at the exact same hour to go to the same job, eat the same thing for dinner. No, that's not how we're supposed to be, right?
That'd be so boring.
Yeah, it's so damn dull. Like, I don't know. Yeah, and I don't want to say I apologize for that, but I'm sorry that you had to go through that, to where your parents wanted you to be like other people instead of embracing who you were at that moment and say, hey, my daughter don't shave her legs. That's okay, right? Why can't that be a story, right? Of, hey, my child don't do that. Oh, your child does that? Well, my child don't do that. Instead of saying, hey, your child does that? Well, I'm going to make my child do that, right? It's like...
Exactly.
Yeah. So...
Yeah. Through your point, yeah. I mean, like, the point was never assimilation, and like, if we were to all step back and just take a second, and like, one of my favorite exercises to do, like, just to kind of affirm my own gender sometimes when I feel like I need it, is like just being by myself and like doing this thought exercise of, if I were on an island alone, how would I behave? How would I act? How would I think? And I think in those situations, and when I think about myself as a parent too, I think like one thing that I want to push myself to do a little bit more is just when these types of value-based questions come up, do I push my child to shave their legs? Do I push my child to wear a dress to homecoming, etc.? I want to push myself to kind of ask, okay, if I were on an island alone and it was just the two of us, myself and my kid, what would I do? And to me, the answer is you just do what makes you and your kid the happiest. You do what makes them happy. You do what you can to see them smile and be comfortable in exactly who they are. And it doesn't have to be this big show. It doesn't need to be news headlines, and it doesn't need to be, this huge thing in our media socio-cultural zeitgeist. It can just be, hey, cool, I'm shrugging my shoulders. My kid doesn't need to shave her legs. Cool, done.
That's so crazy. And I'm gonna speak from a parent's point of view, because my son, let me get his age right, because the last time I said his age, he was like, Dad, that's not how old I am. So he's 28, about to be 29 next month in February. And so as a parent, and I get that, because I knew how it felt for my mom to force things up on me. And so I never wanted to be like that with my child. So I will say this: in the store, what is it that you would like to wear? Bring it to me. As long as we within this budget, I will buy it. Now, I will tell you if it's ugly, right? Yeah. That ain't the color for you. Let's try something else, right? But I won't say, nah, you shouldn't wear that. You should wear this or this and that, right? It's like we're here to shape children. We're not here to make them who we want them to be. We're here to nurture them to be into who they are supposed to be, or who they're destined to be in the first place, right? And so it's just letting the child make their own choices if possible. I say it all the time. If you can let your child tell you they don't want crust on their sandwiches, you can allow them to do other things that speaks to who they are as people, right?
Oh, snaps to that.
Right, because at the end of the day, they're going to grow up to be people, just like you had to grow up to be a person, right? And it's about nurturing a child to be this great person. So
yeah. And I will say it's easier said than done. I do not have firsthand experience being a parent, so I'm not want to take up space in this conversation. But if for me, and just thinking about parenting myself, or just thinking about my own individual personhood, just taking that step back and realizing the context of, hey, this is like such a, like, if I can just be myself, like, there are so many bigger issues that as a collective humanity we can focus our attention on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It is not whether or not I wear this certain thing, or it is not whether or not I prefer crusts on my sandwich. Like,
Yeah.
these things are so minuscule
Yes.
compared to what is going on around the world.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. I agree. I definitely agree. And as a parent, it's tough. It's also tough to raise a child while trying to rewire your brain as how you were raised.
I bet.
So it's definitely difficult. Like, I don't want to be a parent like that. And so it's nice to hold it with grace.
Hey, this is Jackal from Stealth, a Transmasculine podcast. Join me and my co-host Kai as we interviewed transmasculine elders about their experience growing into their authentic selves. The term stealth highlights two important facts. That one, for our generation, we were often told to hide our past and live an underground existence. And that due to that, our stories are very often overlooked. Throughout our lives, each of us has had to navigate issues of disclosure, which have impacted us in many ways. We also have a member section where you'll get to hear some amazing transmasculine history from Black jazz musicians to Mexican revolutionaries. We hope you join us for season 5 as we continue to emphasize that transmasculine folk have always been here and that we will continue to be here. Be sure to check out our website, transmasculinepodcast.com.
That's a great segue though to talk about the times, because now bear with me now. This is going to be long. So bear with me when we're talking about the times. And so as you and I are recording this, it's the day after ICE shot a woman and killed her, executed her in Minneapolis. And so we're talking about the times that we're going through, right? And so whenever folks decide to be a guest on the show, we have, so for folks that are listening, if you ever want to be a guest on the show, we ask the guests to fill out a guest form. And so that way it kind of helps to shape the conversation. I know what you want to talk about, right? I don't want to just come on here and talk about everything I want to talk about. And you like, damn, I came on Dem Bois Podcast. I ain't talking about shit I wanted to talk about. But one of the things, and it ties into what's happening in this moment that you wrote. Now, if you don't mind, can I read it verbatim, what you actually wrote?
Yeah,
that you wanted to talk about. And it was, you wanted to talk about staying connected to and others' humanity during this current time. This is not verbatim. I'm just reading it. And how to stay soft as people and in our humanities in a world that sometimes feels like it demands callousness. That right there. How do we do that as queer folks? As trans folks, how do we stay connected to our humanity when shit is going crazy, right? And when in this toxic masculinity at its finest, when a man, I'm saying a man because in the video is this man, and these ICE agents are typically seen as men. It's toxic masculinity, pushing people around, throwing women down in the courtroom, fucking executing a woman, dragging people up the street, right? We see these toxic forms of what men can do when they're angry and they don't have limitations on what they can do, right? Some of these motherfuckers, excuse me, probably been waiting to do this their whole fucking lives. I'm going to sign up because I get permission to do whatever the fuck I want to do in this position. So how do we hold on to our humanity? How do we stay sane? How do we love on ourselves and each other when it's just absolute chaos right now?
What a prompt, man. It's so layered. And I think what I'll start by saying is I've spent the last 2 days watching the news pretty nonstop, feeling exceptionally angry, checking in on my people who live in Minneapolis, seeing what the state is on the ground, and hearing from the community organizers that I am in network with in Minneapolis. And that's how I've spent the last 24 hours. And as a result, I feel very tired and I feel very, very angry. I was texting a friend earlier today, and I was telling her that if I ever get the chance to become a teacher, professor of any sort, I would want to teach a class that's titled How to Be More Human, not because I was an expert in the subject, but because I want to learn as much as possible about the subject. So all of this to say, what I'll say now about how to connect with each other and be human, I'm talking with very little experience and all the curiosity in the world to learn more about it. So how do we be more human in this situation? Over the last 2 days, what I've been thinking a lot about is like my brain has gone back to George Floyd's murder. I was a student at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities at the time, living in downtown Minneapolis, going to protests. And for the entire year after he was murdered, I was involved with student protests. I was involved in discussions related to anti-Blackness in the Asian American community. I was just trying to get as involved and as angry as I possibly could. And I remember going to a protest exactly a year after he was murdered. And it was in downtown Minneapolis. And I just remember getting there. There were cars around the block, couldn't find a parking space for 30 minutes. And then I got there and I was very confused. And I was like looking around, and there were people playing tag, children blowing bubbles, people barbecuing, a high school marching band playing. And I was like, what is going on? Shouldn't we be angry? Shouldn't we be yelling? Shouldn't we be screaming? Shouldn't we have cardboard signs with all of the words that we want to say on them? So I was very confused. I was like, what is going on? What are we like? What am I even in the right place? So I stopped this guy on my way kind of to meet a friend at the protest. And I was like, what's going on? Like, is this the place for the protest against the Minneapolis Police Department? And what he said completely changed the way that I think about protests. And he said, if we do not also celebrate our joy in our community, how can we have the energy to fight? And it rocked my world, because my thinking around this quote unquote the work, my thinking around what the work was like constantly being burnt out, constantly being angry, constantly fighting a losing battle. When in reality, what I saw exemplified on that day by that community was people coming together despite it all, laughing despite it all, cooking for each other despite it all, taking care of each other despite it all. It was humanity at its finest, even during its darkest moment. And that's a story that I will always carry with me, because it was like just people exemplifying good, reminding everyone around them that good still exists. And in that way, not only did I leave that protest getting out of that area, leaving with hope that things can change, hope that even at a small level, there is something good going on worth fighting for. There's this really great video by John Green, and he's talking about how hope and love are two things that are talked about as things that happen pretty easily. Like you fall in love or you fall into hope. But really what they are is that they're active decisions. You have to decide to put in the effort to love someone or something. You have to decide to put in the effort to have hope in a situation. And something like this, going into a protest and seeing people smiling and laughing and being together as a community, that humanity gave me hope that there is good and there is humanity, period, to fight for. So that was one thing that I've been thinking about. And then the other thing that has been running through my mind over the last couple of days is like, I've just been feeling so lost in where individuals fit into this conversation. Not only what's going on in Minneapolis, but also, for example, what's going on in Venezuela. And we're seeing a fascist dictator completely disregarding any rules of the road, completely disregarding the laws of this nation to do exactly what he wants to do. If he wants to do something, he will do anything to get it, and he's getting away with it. And so, as an individual, without almost this protection of our elected officials, it feels like I've been feeling very helpless. And the way that I've been combating that is, what can I do to make my very tiny corner of the world just a little bit better? And that's the question that I've been actively trying to ask myself too. And it might be something like, hey, I'm going to log on to work early so that this PowerPoint doesn't need a ton of revisions. Or I'm going to take notes super diligently during this work meeting so that the person who's reviewing this does not have an extra thing to worry about on their plate. Like super duper small things that may be inconsequential at the end, but just a little teeny thing for me to be more mindful about how can I give as much as I can possibly give into all of the things that I'm investing my time in.
When I think of you talking about this protest and showing up, and folks are just doing what the opposite of what we think protests should be about, right? Especially when you're coming into a place angry, like, why ain't everybody ain't angry with me, right? But I think that connection to humanity is also our connection to healing.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. And absolutely. Like I had this conversation with a ton of family members, especially around 2020. And I mean, this has been an ongoing conversation for the last 6 years now. But I'll have family members and people in my network ask me, like, why do you even spend time at these protests? Like, they're not doing anything. They're not, progressing any policies. And not only is that untrue, and we know that from historical experience, but I think more than anything, I feel like I gain healing as a result of being in community with people. And these protests are almost a little bit more selfish than selfless, where I feel like sometimes I go for myself. And I think there's this really great quote from a queer activist during the HIV crisis and like the height of the AIDS crisis. And I'm going to look it up because I don't want to missay their words.
Yeah. And while you looking that up, I want to add something that where you were saying that, everyone should be angry. And I thought about when you said that, I thought about a pot of boiling water, right? You put on a pot of boiling water and it boils.
Yeah.
And then once it starts to bubble up and boil, you need to turn it off, right? But what if you didn't turn it off? And so I kind of connect that with your anger. What if you didn't turn the boiling water off? Eventually that pot gonna be empty and all that water is gonna been fizzled out. And now the pot is actually burning because there's no water in there. And so I think about it, if we stay at that anger point all the time, we would deplete ourselves completely. And so sometimes it is healthy to be in touch with our humanity,
absolutely.
And in touch with other things instead of always focusing on the things that makes us angry. Because listen, in this administration, we only a year in. We got 3 more years to be goddamn angry. So we need to turn that pot off and let it simmer until we can, get some of our humanity back, collect ourselves, go with our people and have good food, have good conversations, have good laughs, make good memories so we can return back to the fight and we're not depleted like that pot of boiling water that we didn't turn off. Did you find the quote?
Oh, exactly. And yes, I did. It's by Dan Savage. And he said, during the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning, we protested in the afternoon, and we danced all night. The dance kept us in the fight because it was the dance we were fighting for. It didn't look like we were going to win then, and we did. It didn't feel like we were going to win now, but we could. Keep fighting, keep dancing. So this very perfect, very wise balance of fighting and individual and collective joy.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So you can be there to fight in the morning, right? If you depleted and you tapped
Exactly.
out and now you're in the bed, now you're not a part of the fight. And I think it's
Exactly.
also it sends a message, right? Because if no one went out to protest anywhere, that's complacency, and that's to say that we not out here raising a fuss, so we kind of agree with what's going on. But the moment you step out
Mhm.
on the street, your neighbors step out on the street, everybody in that neighborhood steps out on the street to say, even though we don't see that needle moving, we saying, hell no, we don't like this shit. We want to see change now. And this, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this connects, I think, back to this whole conversation around fighting and violence and peace. Because what we're seeing in Minneapolis now is even Governor Walz is using his platform to say, let's not give them what we want. Let's be Minnesota nice, which frankly, I think is a lot of BS, because I think what the layers we're seeing here is people, especially people in power, know that the second that people on the ground stop talking about something, that is when we are most vulnerable to be attacked. That is when we are most vulnerable to be occupied. The second we stop talking about something, the second we stop raising our voices against fascism, against xenophobia, against homophobia, you name it, the second we stop raising our voices, that's when they know they've won.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it's so important to talk about it. And even in these like little circles that we have our platforms in, I think it's so important to fight for the good. And that's, I say that intentionally, like we have to fight, we have to be open to that violence to achieve good. um, because what the powers that are these fascist administrations, what they're doing is they're enacting physical violence to take away our freedoms, and then telling us that we are not entitled to that same violence to protect our own freedoms. And so even though violence is a tool that has been originated and raised and fostered within marginalized communities throughout history, they're appropriating that tool, taking it away from us, and telling us if you use it, we have grounds to attack you more. So it's this whole convoluted system that is completely nonsensical. But what they're trying to do is take away our voice. And that's why I'm a very violent person, and I'm very proud of that, because I want to be someone who lives by their values. And my value is I will fight. I will be violent in the ways that I can, in order to fight for good, to fight for my people.
Absolutely.
And again, this is like, sorry to cut you off.
No.
This is also something that comes with a lot of privilege. Like right now, I'm in Orlando. I'm in an area where I am physically safe. And still it's hard. It's hard to make the decision to say things, or not to say things sometimes. But in trying to become someone who lives by their values a little bit more every single day, I want to be the Simran who protects their peace by fighting and not shying away from that fight.
Let me ask you a question. What about for folks who are listening to this, right? And like, yes, I agree with protecting our humanity and all of that. But what if we're talking to people who aren't violent? Now I'm gonna tell you this. I try not to be violent, but I'm gonna tell you, if you are attacking me, my community, people that's immediately around me, my family, my loved ones, my son, my granddaughter, I will switch really quickly to activation mode, and I will protect my life and my family at all costs. But there's are people who are even I don't want to say sensitive, but that are fragile in their own identities. They may not want to stick out and then some people just don't have the actual violence, actual fight in them. We have people listen that aren't protesting people. So what are other ways that people can contribute to this without the violence, without with the signs and out in the protest? What are other ways that people can contribute?
Yeah, absolutely. So like when I think of violence as this like very big umbrella term. And I think for the purposes of a discussion, it's really easy to say like, just for a visual, like it's really easy to say like violence is when you're protesting, or violence is, like in these situations, like very high intense situations. But I think at the very inherent level of what violence is, I think violence inherently is an act of resistance. That's what it is to me. And so an act of resistance could be anything from deciding to create art during this time. It could be having conversations like this. It could be deciding to give someone the benefit of the doubt. It could be just going into a very mundane work meeting with a good, calm mindset. Um, just something that connects you to your humanity. Because what we're seeing in the media is these brutal, brutal realities of fascist dictatorships dehumanizing people. And the more we can humanize each other, I think that is resistance. I think that is violence. And so the way that we enact that violence is be in community with each other, listen to each other's stories, so that we can acknowledge and understand each other's humanities. All of that is also under the umbrella of violence as well.
Absolutely. And even if, you were in a privileged position and somebody said, hey, we going out here to protest, but we need somebody to provide us with some waters and some food and some services for folks that's going to join us. And you might say, you know what, I got the resources to do that. I'm going to donate $500. Like that's also contributing right to the movement.
Absolutely.
It could also be like, we would like to host an event. We're going to be protesting. Oh, I have a building. I know somebody that has a building where you all can set up, or you can go to rest and recuperate and do a wellness check and a head count. Right. And so it's like contributing in all these ways of like, you may not have the way to get out there to fight, and that's not in you, but you may have other connections to resources to help the folks that are on the front lines.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll put a plug too. One of my favorite musicians, artists out there is Fightmaster. And one of their latest albums is just called Violence. And in an interview, they were talking about why they decided to title their album Violence. And it was very resonant with this conversation, where they said it's really important for us at this time, especially when we're fighting against malice, to reclaim violence. And the way that they wanted to spread that message is, I think sometimes what has happened over the course of the last couple of decades is violence has been, like I said, appropriated, kind of had a negative connotation around it. And so what Fightmaster does is, hey, let's make violence kind of fun, kind of sexy. And so I'd fully plug and recommend listening to their album Violence.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm gonna make sure to plug that into show notes for folks that are listening, that they can go ahead and tap into that as well. Thank you for that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hey y'all, Pink Lady here. I am the producer for Dem Bois Podcast, and I am so excited to tell you about my production company, Pink Lady Productions. We collaborate with creatives like you who are driven to share your message by launching your podcast from A to Z and coaching you through the process. To learn more about our services, check out our website at pinkladyprod.com. That's PINKLADYPROD.com.
Hi there, I'm Mike, and I'm the creator of Trans Mass Stories. When I was at the start of my transition, I searched for uplifting stories of people who had questioned their gender identity, gone through their transition, and come out stronger. I needed direction and a light at the end of the tunnel. Trans Mass Stories is my way of paying it forward. It's the resource I wish I'd had, a space full of real, positive, and anonymous transition stories from transmasculine individuals, offering clarity and hope for anyone navigating their journey. If you're on the transmasculine spectrum, I'd love for you to share your story. And if you know someone who could use some direction, send them over to transmaskstories.com to explore dozens of transition stories. All right, that's all. Enjoy the show now. Cheers.
And so outside of this, the things that are going on in the world and going a little tapping a little bit back into you. And so you said earlier that your parents was all for you doing whatever you wanted to do till you got to middle school. And then they say, we want you to do this and do that. How are your parents now? How do they receive you now?
I can't speak for them,
Mm.
but I think it is a little mixed, and I think it depends. It depends on the day, and it also depends on: are we alone? Do we have family over? Do we have friends over? And so I think that that idea of like, hey, we're still pretty wound up around how people perceive us is still very ingrained. What I will say is that my mom in particular has done such an amazing job reading and connecting with other parents of queer youth and being part of support groups and talking about it. And it's such a hard thing to do. When I think about putting myself in her shoes, I'm in full admiration about her dedication and her commitment to just helping her kids be happy. So I'm very, very blessed from that perspective. So I think to answer your question, they've grown quite a bit. And I also think that now with time and with practice in understanding who I am, I think I can enter conversations a little bit more level headed and leave knowing that whatever anyone else says, I know who I am and I get to define that on my own terms. That's not for anyone else to comment on anyway.
Oh, big ups to mom. Yes,
Yeah.
mom. Yes, that takes a lot. That takes a lot, but that
It does.
definitely is she needs a medal or something. You got to give her some love for that. Have you ever told her that you appreciate her for doing that? Have you ever vocalized
several
that?
times.
Okay.
Several times.
Okay, because that takes a lot, right? That's vulnerable.
It does.
And
It
that's
does.
vulnerable. That's almost like a parent saying, I don't know what to do with my child. I need help. Right. And parents try to act like they got it all figured out, and some to the detriment of their children and their future. Because some parents don't tap in and say, I need some help. Right. But I think that that's so vulnerable. Say, I need help. I want to know how to show up better for my child. And little does she know, it's not just showing up better for you. It's also showing up better for anybody who she may come in contact with. Right. She could be talking to somebody in the produce aisle over celery, and then, and they may be a queer person, and her conversation with them is shaped by what she's already learned. So she's doing better in the world, not just for you, but for everybody else she comes in contact with. She's setting an example. Big ups to mom. Go, mom.
Big ups. Yeah. And for herself too, I'll add. Like, there's been so much personal growth. I moved back to be closer to both my parents, and I originally, grew up in Minneapolis, was in DC for a hot minute for work, and then moved to Orlando really to be closer to family. And I mean, her personal growth too, like, has been astronomical. And I think what is so admirable is that she's just been so open to learning in new ways or experiencing different things. And I think it's something that I have to like consciously push myself to do too. Cause like sometimes I'll just get stuck in my ways and I'll say, hey, I think I know everything about this topic, or I have experience in this topic, when in reality, I mean, we're all experiencing January 8th, 2026 for the first time. None of us know
I love that.
anything. And there's so much beauty in that, and there's so much potential in that too. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. That is a good saying. That is true. We all will have experience. We all have experience in yesterday, but we don't have any experience in tomorrow. So we all moving into it with the same experience. I love that. I never thought about it that way. That's a beautiful way to look at it, right? And so that's just another way of saying tomorrow is a new start. Tomorrow is a new day. Start all over because you haven't done this day yet. Oh, I love that. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. And so I know we kind of almost getting close to the time, and I want to ask you something, because you earlier in my introduction, I said you're a marathoner.
Yeah.
And I've shared some stories with you before as also I was once a runner, but it's always still in my heart, right?
Yeah.
And so
it doesn't leave you.
Yeah, it doesn't. But I know that you are actively a runner. And so I want you to speak a little bit, and because we also, referring it back to the current times, right? I feel like at this point, everybody is under attack. It started with trans folks, started with immigrants, started with all these little bitty things. But as a matter of fact, after what we saw in Minneapolis, we are all under attack. Nobody is safe. And in the moment that you think that you're safe, you're not safe. So if you think you are safe, you are not. So I just want to put that out there for anybody, because they could come for anybody. So, and I don't want to, that scare tactic. I don't want to say it in a fear kind of way. But as a runner, and they're talking about trans athletes in sports, how do you as a marathoner represent that piece of the community to say, no, we're not that, we're this?
I think marathons are so beautiful because, and we've talked about this before, Sean, but I think it's worth repeating. When you're at mile 20, 22, you're hurting, you're fighting against yourself. And it goes back to that thought exercise too, of like, when it's just you against you, who do you show up as? Who do you decide to be? And why do you keep going? And when you ask yourself like those types of questions, you end and you cross the finish line knowing that you earned the right to define who you are. And I think marathons are great because we can have a day to close the city. We have people coming from all over the world to cheer, and that's amazing. But there are people completing their own marathons in their own ways. You have your single parents putting a kid through college. You have people protesting even with full-time jobs. You have people parenting kids and taking care of their older parents. Like, we're all running our own marathons, and we all have moments of miles 20, 22 where our endurance and our personhood is really tested. So it's these questions of why do we keep going and why do we keep doing what I'm doing? And as it relates to being a trans marathoner, I think sometimes what I'll think about in those situations is I'll repeat mantras like queer power, or I'll say things like, I know that I am gritty. I know that I am capable. I know that I can cross the finish line. And I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing it to entertain anyone out there. I'm not doing it for the transphobes in the comments of my social media posts, whatever. I'm doing this for me. And so I think about like the 9-year-old me. I think about the middle school me that was forced to conform. I was thinking about the college age me that was fighting back against everyone and everything to try to prove to someone who I am, when in reality, all I needed to do was prove that to myself. And to bring this full circle now, I think marathons are great, and I love running, and I love tests of endurance because I get to prove to myself exactly what I am made of and exactly who I am.
Wow, it's beautiful. Wow. So a marathon is not about the medal at the end, not about the post-race food, not about the celebrations, but it's about a journey and a fight and a battle within yourself.
Listen, it's about all the other things too. I like the celebration. I love the carb loading. Give me the food. I love it. It is also about the proving to yourself and the dialogue you get to have with yourself. I will also say one of the things that I remind myself, especially when I'm feeling nervous about an upcoming race, is to run a marathon well. I don't think that you need to be fast. I don't think that you need the $50 gels. I don't think that you need the carbon-plated shoes. I think to run a marathon well, you really have to fall in love with humanity. You really have to be at mile 12 and look across your right shoulder and see this guy from Ukraine and fist bump him. Like, how bizarre is that? Like, how bizarre do you get to share it? How bizarre is it that you get to share a road with this dude from Ukraine and this dude from Morocco and just run freely together toward the same destination? And you don't know them and you don't know their stories, but with every bone in your body, you are rooting for them to cross the finish line. And they don't know you and they don't know your story, but they're rooting for you to cross the finish line all the same. And isn't that such a beautiful testament to the good that humanity could be? Isn't that such a beautiful testament to what we could do when we're together and just rooting for each other? And I think that's the kind of love of humanity that you need to run a marathon well. And that's what always keeps me coming back, is just like these bizarre connections that I would have never imagined would have happened had I not been just like moving my limbs toward a certain goal.
Yes. And that brought it just that full circle, how you tied that back into humanity. And just to know that Simran means peace. But you've always had this kind of fight in you, right? Even from starting out with karate. And just, it's like, it's not funny, but it's just so great to know that everything within your being has been nurtured. You realize that? Like, it has been nurtured, right? Even for them times when you said, I'm not wearing them heels, but I'm gonna put on these flats, right? And it's that fight in you, right? To get you to where you are now, to get you to mile 20, get you to mile 21, right? And so that's like, it's always been there. It's always been in you, right? And you just exhibiting that out. And now we are witnessing your greatness. And so I think that's amazing.
It's so heartwarming to hear you say that too, because sometimes, I'm in my own head. My head is down. I'm just trying to get through the day or what have you. And my God, it's so wonderful to hear you say that and just step back for a second.
Yes. Take it all in, right? We have to also learn to take that in, because sometimes we just move on from one thing to the next and we don't take the moments to think about what we moved in and who we affected in those moments when we were doing the other thing, and we just skip to the other. No, exactly. Right? Just to know that you are great and you're moving and you're in your purpose and has always been in you, and it's been nurtured in ways. Sometimes we get nurtured and we don't even know it. We don't recognize it until we get to this point. We're like, oh, all of this was to get me here. Oh, got it. Right. And so that's amazing. That's so amazing. So, Simran, this is the time and the part of the show where I love to ask my guests a random ass question. I got this long list that's been just developing over time. And the question may or may not have anything to do with what we talked about, but just pick a number. I got 84 here. So pick a number between 1 and 84 and I'll read you that question.
43.
Number 43. Do you know that question? Went straight to it.
I have no clue what that question is, but I like the number 43 because my favorite football player of all time is Troy Polamalu. I wore number 43 in his honor as I played basketball throughout my teenage years. So 43 is one of my favorites.
Nice. Nice. I love his little hair commercials.
I know.
So number 43, which is so weird because I always say we picking a random ass question that don't have nothing to do with what we talked about. But sometimes people literally pick questions that have something to do with what we talked about. Oh. So number 43 says, what are some of your passions?
Maybe I'll just give like a really random response just to throw the listeners off.
Go for it.
What are my passions? I really love cloud watching. I could do that all day. I also really like coffee. Really love specialty coffees. I love exploring different coffee shops. Orlando has a really lovely and lively coffee scene as well. What are my other passions? I guess this relates to running, but I could talk about running shoes all day.
Wow.
Very, very niche, but passionate about running shoes.
Oh, that's so dope. I love that. And we kind of got something in common, actually, because I love coffee too. And when I travel to other countries, I always make sure I go check out their coffee. I got to bring some coffee back. And I used to be, when I used to be my running pre-injuries, I used to study running shoes. I used to get those magazines that tell you what was the best running shoes of that year. Yeah. And I would read everything. And then I would go and buy my running shoes for the next year based on that. So that's so dope. I love that.
Yeah, I do the same.
Simran, is there anything else that you would like to leave for folks before we get up out of here?
Usually I would come up with something snippy or something fun, but honestly, I think I really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for having me, and thank you for hearing me out today. It was great. And for the listeners, before we pressed record, I told Sean the last conversation we had left me with the warm and fuzzies, and I feel the same way now.
Oh,
so thank you for a very, very warm and fuzzy conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, we hit on some really intense topics, but I'm glad we found the nuance and like something to smile about by the end of it too.
Yes, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I appreciate you.